Good evening. Tonight you lie back and we walk together into a city that glitters on dark water. You can smell it before you see it. Copal smoke is sweet and sticky in your nose. Cacao is warming your throat with a pinch of chile that makes you blink once, then breathe deeper. Drums speak in slow sentences across the lake, and torches comb thin ladders of light up the steps of a great temple. You do not hurry. You do not have to know the names yet. The city will tell you. You stand in Tenochtitlan, a web of causeways and canals, a mirror of stars laid flat on a lake. Ahead rises the double pyramid of the Templo Mayor, a staircase for gods and for people who pretend very calmly that they are not afraid. The plaza is crowded but patient. Banners drift. Feathers breathe in a small night wind. The musicians keep their pulse, and you find your own pulse begins to match theirs, which is unnerving and also oddly comforting, like falling asleep to a neighbor's washing machine. Somewhere, a vendor ladles out a foamy chocolate drink, and you make a mental note that if this is a nightmare, at least it is a well-catered one. An attendant brushes red across a participant's skin. The color is not only color, it is a promise. A priest adjusts a mask. Another sings. The song does not rush toward a chorus. It loops like a canal bending between chinampas and returns to a familiar phrase, which is helpful when your mind wants to race ahead. You are not here to sprint. You are here to sink, very slowly, as if the bed were a raft, as if the raft were a leaf, as if the leaf were learning how to fall. You listen for the idea that ties the night together. In this empire, the body is not private. It is a tool, a message, a bridge. Desire is a river invited to flow where priests say the fields need water. Union can be ceremonial. Abstinence can be ceremonial. The personal is never only personal. If this feels intense for a bedtime story, you are right, but it also moves with an almost bureaucratic calm. The world must be fed. The sun must be coaxed up again. There is a calendar. There are specialists. There are rehearsals. Everyone has a job. In a way, it is like planning a wedding with the entire city as your wedding party and the sky as your mother-in-law. No pressure. You notice the quirky detail that makes the scene stick. A gourd cup passes hand to hand, the chocolate thick and foamed with a carved stick. A pinch of chile warming the tongue so the heart does not stumble when the drums do. It is not a luxury tonight, it is fuel. Later there will be pulque, with its mild sour bloom, and food that tastes like coming back to yourself. For now the cup is a small comfort that spells a kind of contract. We agree to do difficult things. We agree to do them together. We agree to help the sun. Also, please do not spill on the feathers. The torches climb. The crowd hushes. Someone laughs in the way people laugh when a child trips and is fine. Someone else murmurs a prayer. The air feels thinner on the tongue, like the peak of a hill where you will see the view if you are very still. You keep your eyes on the stairs. You keep your thoughts in a shallow bowl. What will happen is not a surprise. It is on the calendar, after all. That is one way to make horror manageable, not by reducing it, but by scheduling it. Think of it as the original subscription plan. You pay devotion. The sun renews. There are no free trials. Scholars will later argue about what you are seeing. They will put the Florentine Codex on the desk and point to its drawings and to the words gathered by Bernardino de Sahagún and his informants. They will say the Spanish chroniclers sharpened certain edges to justify conquest. They will say the ritual language exaggerates in the way liturgy always exaggerates, which is to say, it reaches for more than the plain.
They will point to excavations, to altars, to residues of copal and flowers, to the place where music made the dust dance. They will debate which unions were symbolic and which were enacted, who was permitted to touch and who was asked to refuse, how the body stood in for a god and when a god was imagined into a body. You are not a referee tonight. You are a witness with your eyelids softening, trying to carry a careful thought across a narrow bridge without dropping it into the lake. The priest raises both hands. The drummers widen the space between beats so time can stretch like taffy. This is not the part where you panic. This is the part where you notice how organized fear can become when everyone agrees to it. The participants step forward with deliberate grace. You do not see anything you do not need to see. You hear the litany. You understand the meanings stacked on meanings. Fertility means corn and children and rain and debts paid to the past. Purity means rules, and rules mean you can sleep at night because you know what tomorrow expects from you. You are allowed to be skeptical and still be quiet. Both things can be true, and that is usually where truth lives. A joke sneaks in because the human brain insists. You realize that if there had been comment sections in the plaza, someone would be typing in all caps that they did it better last year. Another person would ask for precise step counts for the processional because their pedometer is judging them. A third would complain gently about the price of feathers. You smile with your mouth closed. You remember you are here to ease down, not to rev up. So we begin with a thesis you can rest on. In the Aztec world, sexuality is not merely private pleasure, it is a system of signs and vows, a public language used to keep the cosmos punctual. It can require union, and it can require refusal. It can make a person into a bridge between names. It can set a calendar in motion. The night breathes. The drums return to the earlier sentence, and you feel your own breath follow the period. You do not need to memorize the gods. You do not need to pass a quiz. The only exam is the morning, and it comes whether you study or not. Before we sink another inch, a gentle invitation. If you find these slow corridors comforting, if you like the way the city rises around the lake in patient geometry, consider pressing the little buttons that make this channel breathe easier. Like, if you wish. Subscribe if you want the next story to find you in your pillow fortress. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time your night begins. I read those notes like tiny lanterns in a canal. They help me steer. Now, switch off the lights. Turn on the fan or whatever hum keeps your room honest. Let your jaw unclench the way a knot understands it is only rope. You and I will walk the causeways at the same slow pace. When you are ready, we will step from the plaza into the wider map that explains how a people could weave desire and duty into one long thread, and why some say the thread is braided and others say the braid was added later. The drums do not mind which side you take. They only mind the rhythm. You can keep it. You already are.
You lean against the stone edge of the plaza and let the city explain itself. Tenochtitlan stretches around you like a riddle that solved itself centuries before you arrived. The year is somewhere in the middle of the 15th century. The Triple Alliance is firm. Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan ruling together, though the first carries the heaviest voice. The Mexica lords look across their causeways and see tribute flowing in, cotton from the coast, cacao from the south, obsidian blades sharp as honesty itself. The empire is young and also very old, like a tree that grew fast and convinced itself it had always been tall. The emperor, Huaytlaltoani, sits in painted splendor. His role is not simply to command armies. He speaks for the gods,
or pretends convincingly enough that most citizens believe him. Behind him stand priests with hair knotted and robes blackened by copal smoke. Their calendars are not wall decorations, they are gears that turn the sky. Days have names, numbers carry moods. Your own birthday, if you were Aztec, would be a sentence in a larger paragraph, written by gods with sharp styluses. Around you the city hums. Farmers bring maize from chinampas, fluting gardens anchored with willow poles, thick with squash and beans. Canoes knock gently against canal walls. A woman sells tamales wrapped in green leaves, steam breathing out like soft sighs. Someone else grinds cacao on a metate, adding a hint of vanilla orchid for sweetness. It is not festival food, it is daily life, but daily life already tastes ceremonial. You take a sip in your imagination. It is bitter and sweet, thick as cream, and you wonder if sleep itself could be brewed this way. The political stage is less comfortable. Tribute states grumble. Tlaxcala resists and waits like a thorn in the empire's foot. Campaigns bring captives home because captives are needed. War is not only conquest, it is harvest, and what is harvested is not grain, but people. Each body is potential offering, potential bride or groom for a god who measures love in blood. This is the logic written on banners, sung in chants, carved into temple steps. Common life runs beneath. Children chase each other with reed toys. Traders haggle in Tlatelolco market, the largest anyone in Europe would ever have seen if they had seen it then. A Spanish chronicler later swears that 60,000 people could shop here in one day. He may exaggerate. Historians still debate the math, the same way they debate everything else. How many sacrifices, how frequent the rituals, how literal the marriages between human and divine. The numbers blur, but the impression is steady. This was a city that thrived on spectacle as much as maize. Your nose catches another detail. A merchant fries chapulines, small grasshoppers spiced with chile and lime. They pop under the teeth, salty and bright. You imagine chewing them slowly, each crunch counting down towards something larger than appetite. That is how the empire feels. Each small act, eating, walking, grinding maize, belongs to a bigger choreography. Even sleep is part of the ritual. To close your eyes is to keep the calendar honest, to give the gods the courtesy of a pause. You notice, too, the way water rules everything. The city floats. Causeways tie it to the shore, but canals divide its heart. Priests sprinkle water in purification rites. Lovers bathe before unions. Farmers rely on chinampa irrigation. Water is the mother and also the mirror. Without it, Tenochtitlan is only stone and dust. With it, the city is a reflection of stars, and the stars demand reflection back in kind. That exchange, liquid for fire, flesh for sunrise, will soon show itself in the plaza. So you are not merely watching politics. You are tasting tamales, hearing frogs in the canals, feeling humidity cling to your shirt. You are living inside a balance act. The Aztec world is rich, disciplined, and fragile all at once. Its leaders believe rituals knit the sky together. Its citizens walk those threads without asking too many questions. And here, among them, you begin to sense the next turn. The drums will not stay distant forever. The marketplace laughter will give way to chanting. The cacao foam will stiffen on your lips. Soon you will see why the most intimate acts could be drafted into public service, and how desire itself was bent into a lever for the sun.
You step closer to the temple steps and notice a young man waiting in the shadows. He is no priest, no lord. He is simply a warrior of the Mexica, maybe 19, maybe 20.
His hair is tied back with a strip of cotton. Feathers hang from his shoulders, dyed bright enough to shimmer even in torchlight. The mask he wears is carved wood painted with turquoise powder. It is not heavy, but he adjusts it often, the way people fidget when their nerves cannot be hidden. You are standing behind him in line, as if you too were expected to climb. The stone under your feet is cool and damp. The air tastes faintly of chile and smoke. His name is not written in the codices. He is one of many, a soldier chosen to take part in tonight's pageant. For him, it is not strange. From boyhood, he has been trained to fight, to capture, to serve. He knows that bravery and beauty are often measured side by side. Tonight he feels both, though his stomach insists on fluttering. You almost laugh because nerves are timeless. Even warriors who face gods apparently get stage fright. He lifts a cup of cacao to his lips. It is not sweet, like you might wish. It is thick, bitter, and dusted with chile powder that burns the throat in a way meant to feel holy. He swallows hard, blinks back the heat, and sighs. This is his fuel. This is the taste of courage as prescribed by priests. If courage had a brand sponsor, it would be cacao with chile. The drums pick up again. They are not fast, but they are steady. He finds his own breathing falling into their rhythm. You feel it too, your ribs opening in time with each boom. He looks up at the steps. He has seen men carried up those stairs. He has seen women dressed as brides for gods, painted with patterns that erase them into symbols. He knows tonight he will stand beside them, not as victim, but as participant, one piece in a woven pattern. A small joke sneaks into your head. If this young man lived today, he might be checking his reflection in a phone screen, worrying if his feathers are crooked, posting, "Wish me luck," with a shaky smile. Instead, he just tightens the strap of his mask. Different centuries, same human nerves. Behind him, older warriors murmur. One remembers the campaign against Tlaxcala, another laughs too loud at something trivial, like the way his sandals pinch. These fragments of conversation make the moment almost ordinary. Even before rituals, people still complain about their shoes. You watch the young man's fingers. He toys with a small amulet of obsidian hanging at his neck. It is polished but not perfect, a chip missing on the edge. Perhaps it belonged to his father. Perhaps he carved it himself. He presses it once to his lips, then lets it fall back. Tiny gestures like this are invisible in grand accounts of history, but up close, they are the details that keep the story breathing. The priest calls his group forward. He stiffens, lifts his chin, and steps into the torchlight. You walk with him in your imagination, your body heavy but steady. The plaza noise recedes. You are inside a tunnel of sound and expectation. It is not terror, not yet. It is a careful surrender to something larger than either of you.
The young warrior wakes before dawn. He has not slept well. The mat beneath him is woven from reeds, rough and slightly damp from the lake air. His stomach growls, but not from hunger alone. It is nerves, the kind that turn food sour before it is even swallowed. You lie there with him, staring at the ceiling of woven palm fronds, listening to the drums begin again in the distance. They do not wait for anyone. Time in this city is a tide, and you rise whether you are ready or not. Breakfast is simple. A tamale made of maize, plain and a little stale. He bites without complaint, because to complain would be shameful. Alongside it he chews something stranger, a handful of amaranth seeds mixed with honey. The texture is sticky, clumping in his teeth. You know this mixture later becomes a treat for children, but here it is ritual food. a symbolic echo of flesh and blood, a reminder of what the gods expect. You swallow with him and taste both sweetness and unease. He dresses carefully. His cotton tunic is patched, the color faded from sun and rain. The feathers for ceremony are brighter, but not more comfortable. They itch at his neck. He pulls them straight and sighs. Around him others are preparing in silence. The plaza smells of damp earth, charcoal, and the faint sour tang of pulque spilled from last night. His legs ache from standing too long, but he does not shift his weight. To fidget is to admit weakness. The city is awake now. Farmers push canoes piled with squash. Traders shout the prices of salt and obsidian. Children laugh, chasing each other through the alleys. The sound stings a little. He remembers being small, playing with reed balls, carefree. That was before he was taught that the body is not his own, that it belongs to gods and empire alike. You feel the heaviness settle in him. Even laughter is a memory he can no longer claim. The priests gather the chosen in a line. Today they will march again, not yet to the summit, but closer, always closer. The sun rises, warm and merciless. Sweat beads under his tunic. He licks dry lips. One of the priests offers him a drink of atole, a maize porridge thinned with water. It is bland, almost tasteless, but it fills the hollow in his belly. The warmth makes him believe he can walk another hour. That is all courage sometimes is, a warm liquid, a deep breath, and no permission to turn away. He notices something absurd and almost laughs. A fly hovers at his face, insistent, refusing to be shooed. Here he is, about to become a living emblem of divine duty, and he cannot even defeat a single fly. He smiles faintly behind the mask. You do too. The human scale persists no matter how grand the stage. Historians still argue how much of this routine was terror and how much was pride. Did the chosen warriors dread the climb, or did they embrace it as an honor, convinced the gods themselves would notice their bravery? The records disagree. Some speak of trembling, others of radiant smiles. Truth, as always, may be both. A body can shake and shine at the same time. By midday, the hunger returns. His hands shake slightly, not from fear now, but from emptiness. The priests ration food carefully. Ceremony is meant to be felt in the gut as well as in the mind. The tamale was thin, the atole watery. His stomach folds into itself. You feel the hollowness with him. It is a silence inside the body that echoes louder than drums. He steadies himself, focusing on the sound of water against stone, on the way sunlight glints off obsidian blades carried by guards. These are the anchors that hold him upright. You borrow them too, little details that keep the scene balanced. Hunger gnaws, but the city continues, and so does he. When evening comes, the torches flare again. The warrior kneels as instructed. His knees ache on the stone, but he does not shift his weight. Sweat dries on his skin, leaving salt that burns his eyes when he rubs them. He bows his head. The drums slow. His body is both his own and not his own. He closes his eyes and tells himself that this is endurance. This is survival, even if survival means surrender.
The young warrior's body begins to betray him
At first, it is a cough that scratches the throat, a small irritation he tries to swallow away. Then comes the ache in his joints, the heaviness in his limbs, as though stone weights have been tied to his wrists and ankles. You feel it with him, that dull fatigue that turns every movement into an argument between will and muscle. The sun does not care. It rises and it burns the plaza white. Food is scarce by design. Today he receives a scrap of maize cake, no filling, only a dry crumble that sticks in his mouth. Alongside it, the priests pass out something stranger still, a little broth made from maguey worms. The taste is sharp, earthy, almost metallic. He forces it down, reminding himself that nourishment is not luxury, but duty. You make a face in sympathy. Hunger can make even worms into ritual. He notices how his sandals are failing him. The leather thongs have worn thin, and each step scrapes his skin against rough stone. A blister blooms on his heel. He limps, just slightly, and quickly corrects it. To show pain would be to invite shame. You wince quietly on his behalf. A blister is small, but when repeated against stone steps, it becomes a sermon the body cannot stop preaching. Around him, others falter. One warrior sneezes blood into his palm. Another sways on his feet until a priest steadies him. The city does not pause. Canoes still glide through canals, traders still shout their prices, children still chase each other. Life and ritual run side by side, and if one stumbles, the other does not look down. The warrior remembers stories of plagues. He has heard of fever sweeping through households, leaving silence where laughter had been. He has heard that even warriors chosen for ceremony sometimes collapse, too weak to climb, and are carried anyway, their bodies still useful, though their spirits already fled. Historians argue over numbers, tallying bones and records, trying to measure epidemics in neat rows of figures. But for him, it is not data. It is the tremor in his legs, the rasp in his breath, the sight of sweat shining on the back of his friend's neck. He sits briefly in the shade, rubbing his chest, when a thought rises uninvited. If the gods require perfection, why do they choose bodies that cough and stumble? Perhaps imperfection is the point. Perhaps the gods wish to remind mortals that strength is a temporary gift. You smile wryly at his reasoning. It sounds like the sort of line someone might post online with a moody filter. Perfection is an illusion, even for offerings. Only there is no posting here, only stone and sky. A priest interrupts his thoughts, handing him a rope belt to tighten his tunic. The rope is rough, scraping his waist. He imagines it biting deeper, binding him not just to clothing, but to fate. He ties it anyway. The fibers dig into his skin. He tells himself that discomfort is a companion, not an enemy. Evening brings more fatigue. His cough worsens. He feels the thrum of fever in his temples. The torches flare again, shadows growing long across the plaza. He kneels, just as he did yesterday, but this time his legs quiver beneath him. His breath rattles. He closes his eyes and listens to the drums. The rhythm is steady, while his own pulse skips and stutters. It is a strange comfort to know that the city keeps time even when his body falters. Historians still debate how sickness shaped these rituals. Were participants allowed to step back if too ill, or were they pushed forward regardless, bodies valued only as symbols? The codices do not answer cleanly. Some say mercy was shown. Others insist no one was spared. The truth may hide between, like smoke twisting between torches. For the young warrior, there is no debate. He is here, feverish and limping, and still expected to rise with the dawn. The gods have a schedule. His body must obey. He lies down at last, head spinning, stomach empty. He curls around the cough that rattles his ribs. Sleep comes slowly, not as gift,
but as truce. You lie beside him in imagination, breathing the same thick air, feeling the same ache. The night is not quiet. The city hums. Frogs croak in canals. Drums echo faintly. And somewhere a priest sharpens an obsidian blade. The sound carries into dreams.
You shift your gaze across the plaza and find another figure waiting in the same heavy night. She is not a warrior of the Mexica. She is a captive, brought from Tlaxcala, her wrists once bound, now merely marked by the memory of ropes. Her hair is braided with care, though the strands are fraying after days of travel. Her eyes are steady. She has been chosen to play a role more intimate and more terrifying, the bride of a god. Her day begins differently. Instead of the reed mat of a soldier's quarters, she wakes on woven blankets inside a chamber set aside for captives destined for ritual. The air is thick with incense. The walls are bare except for one painted image of Tlazolteotl, goddess of purification, who devours sins through acts the Spaniards later wrote of with horror. The captive woman stares at the painting for too long, wondering if it is a warning or a strange kind of comfort. Breakfast is offered. Not much, but finer than she expected. A small maize cake with beans inside, a cup of foamy cacao. The taste is foreign to her tongue, bitter with spice, nothing like the food of her home. Still she swallows. Hunger is honest, and ceremony requires strength. A guard watches her with the same expression you might use when making sure a candle does not go out. He is not cruel. He is simply distant, the way someone must be when they see a life as an object on a calendar. The city noise filters in through open windows. She hears the marketplace begin its chorus. Merchants shout the price of obsidian knives and cotton cloth. Children laugh, chasing reed toys through the dust. Canoes knock against canal walls. For a moment she forgets she is a prisoner. The city feels alive in a way her village never did, but then she touches her wrists and remembers. She looks down at a small personal detail she has kept, a woven band tucked into her tunic. It is faded, dyed with a pattern from her homeland. Perhaps it was from her mother, or a friend, or simply a scrap she clung to during capture. She rubs the fabric between her fingers. It is not much, but it is hers. For now, it anchors her. The priests enter, their hair matted with incense smoke. They paint her skin with red designs. The brush is soft, but the strokes are deliberate, almost possessive. Each line marks her less as herself and more as a vessel. She closes her eyes. The sensation is strange, a blend of shame and power. She wonders briefly if she looks beautiful or only frightening. You wonder too, because beauty and fear are not opposites here. They are companions. Historians argue about how literally these roles were enacted. Did the women chosen as brides consummate symbolic marriages with gods, or were these gestures theatrical, performed without completion? The codices speak in metaphors, and the Spanish accounts drip with bias. Some scholars say exaggeration was common, a way for conquerors to paint the Mexica as monstrous. Others believe the intimacy was real, woven into a fabric of fertility and sacrifice. Tonight, you cannot be certain. You only see a young woman painted in red, her breath slow, her fingers tight on a strip of cloth. She is led outside. The sun is higher now, hot against her painted skin. The plaza crowds again, drums pulsing like a second heartbeat. She walks with measured steps, guarded on both sides. People stare, but not with cruelty. They stare with reverence, the way farmers look at maize in the field, knowing it will soon be cut down to keep life moving forward. A moment of humor breaks the heaviness. One of the younger boys in the crowd points at her feathers and whispers to his friend, trying to copy the proud strut of warriors. The friend shushes him, terrified the priests will hear. The woman catches the boy's eye and almost smiles. Even here, in the shadow of ritual, mischief survives. The procession moves forward. She climbs one step, then another. The drums thicken. The priests chant. She does not stumble. You climb with her in imagination, each stone step heavier than the last. At the top waits the temple, and within it, the God she has been promised to.
The woman's body begins to understand what her mind has already feared. The rituals do not end after a single day. They stretch into cycles, each one a demand on her strength. Sleep is scarce. Priests wake her before dawn, their chants already buzzing like insects in the air. She rises with heavy limbs, her shoulders sore from lying on reed mats that never quite soften. Her eyelids drag, but she keeps them open because to close them would be to risk a reprimand. Food is sparse, and when it comes, it feels strange to her taste. This morning she receives a handful of roasted pumpkin seeds and a small gourd of pulque, the milky drink fermented from agave. It is sour, frothy, faintly alcoholic. She sips, wrinkles her nose, and forces it down. The priests believe it steadies the body for ceremony. To her, it feels like drinking smoke dissolved in milk. You taste it in imagination and admit it is not what you would want before breakfast. Still, it fills her stomach for a moment. The day unfolds with processions. She walks in long lines through plazas while drums keep time. The sun beats hard against her painted skin, and sweat blurs the red designs until they run like fading ink. The feathers in her headdress grow heavier by the hour. Her calves ache from climbing stairs again and again, up and down as rehearsals demand. She begins to stumble, only slightly, but the stone underfoot is unkind and sharp. Her breath shortens. You feel her ribs expand with effort, as if each inhale costs her more than the last. Crowds stare. Children watch from behind their mothers' skirts. Merchants pause their bargaining to glance up. The eyes of the city weigh on her more heavily than the headdress. She tells herself not to falter because faltering would be public, and in this place, public is everything. Her private exhaustion has no value, only the ritual has value. She remembers her home village, the fields of maize, the laughter of her sisters as they ground kernels on the stone slab, the smell of tortillas puffing on a clay griddle. That memory is both comfort and torment. It reminds her she is more than a vessel. It also reminds her she will not return. You sense the heaviness of memory pressing down harder than the feathers. A priest hands her a token of food during the march, a strip of dried fish from the lake. It is salty and tough. She chews until her jaw aches. The taste of lake water spreads in her mouth. It does not ease her hunger. Instead, it magnifies thirst. Her lips crack, her throat burns, and still the drums call her forward. Historians argue about the treatment of captives chosen for these roles. Some accounts claim they were honored, dressed in finery, fed richly until the final act. Others insist their lives were disciplined into hardship, kept deliberately weary so submission would come more easily. The truth may be a braid of both stories. Tonight, for her, it is the second story that feels closest to the skin. A small absurdity breaks into the scene. As she walks, one of the priests sneezes loudly, his painted mask nearly sliding off. The crowd chuckles softly. She catches herself smiling despite her exhaustion. For a moment, she is not a bride of a god, not a captive of an empire, Just a woman watching another human sneeze at the worst possible time. The humor is fleeting, but it lingers like a tiny ember against the night's cold. By dusk, her steps are clumsy. The plaza tilts in her vision. She kneels when told to kneel, but her knees throb against the stone. She lowers her head, closes her eyes, and lets the drums wash over her. They are steady, louder than her heartbeat, and she surrenders to the rhythm because resisting would take more strength than she has left.
Night falls heavy, and with it her mind begins to unravel. The body has already learned how to walk hungry, how to kneel on stone until skin splits. Now comes a sharper test, the kind that does not bruise the flesh, but gnaws at the inside. She is asked to prepare for another ceremony, this one quieter, more intimate. The priests paint her again, the brush tracing patterns across her arms, and whisper prayers that sound less like blessings and more like instructions. She sits in a chamber lit by a single torch. The air is thick, hot, and still. A priest recites verses that tell her she is no longer herself, but a vessel of the goddess. She is told her desires are not hers, her body not hers. You listen with her. Each word presses against her, like a hand pushing her further away from herself. She lowers her eyes because looking up feels like defiance, and defiance here is dangerous. They bring another captive into the room, a man chosen to act as a symbol of the god. He looks no stronger than she feels. His wrists are marked by ropes, his shoulders tense. Their eyes meet, and for a heartbeat, they are simply two humans caught in the same net. Then the priest interrupts, directing them like actors on a stage. The intimacy that might have been theirs alone becomes public, scripted, drained of choice. You feel the weight of it, how even tenderness has been drafted into service. She wants to resist. The thought flares like a match, but the torchlight reveals guards standing at the entrance, their obsidian blades catching the glow. Resistance would mean more than punishment for her. It would mean shame for her people, perhaps harsher tribute for those left behind. She swallows hard. Her silence is not agreement, but it is survival. In your imagination, you hear her voice as if she whispers to you, "If I remain still, perhaps I remain mine. If I let them guide me, perhaps I keep one corner of myself folded away." It is not a declaration, not a rebellion, but a fragile strategy. You understand it. Sometimes to endure is not to fight, but to hide a piece of your soul where no one can reach. Historians debate these ceremonies. Some claim they were symbolic, theatrical, never fully enacted. Others argue the opposite, that real intimacy was demanded as proof of devotion. The Spanish chroniclers wrote with a hunger to shock their readers, and so exaggeration is certain. But exaggeration does not erase the possibility that the truth was already difficult. Scholars circle the question, never able to land. You sit with the uncertainty, letting it weigh without rushing to solve it. Her crisis deepens when the man beside her trembles. He whispers a prayer to his own God, one not welcome here. She hears it. The priest hears nothing, but she does. And in that moment, she feels both solidarity and terror. Solidarity because she knows he is still himself beneath the paint. Terror because to reveal that prayer would mean death before dawn. She lowers her head, as if in prayer too, but really in silence to protect them both. A flicker of humor sneaks in despite everything. The priest's chanting grows so monotonous that her mind wanders. She thinks absurdly of how her sisters used to mimic the droning tone of elders, giggling behind their hands. The memory almost makes her smile, though she hides it quickly. Even here, even now, the human brain insists on comedy. You cannot help it either.
You imagine a child rolling her eyes at the endless chant, and for a moment, the weight lifts. When the ritual ends, she is led back to her mat. She lies down without undressing, the paint still sticky on her skin. She stares at the ceiling and feels both empty and crowded, her body a vessel, yet still her own. She tells herself she has survived another night. Tomorrow will ask more. She closes her eyes and lets sleep come like a thief, quietly and without permission.
For a while, you drift away from both the warrior and the captive. The plaza exhales and the city hums in quieter tones. Not every moment is drenched in ritual. Some belong to repetition, the kind of rhythms that seem unimportant until you were trapped inside them. You listen now to those small sounds. A woman kneels by the canal, grinding maize on a stone slab. The rasp of stone against stone is steady, almost hypnotic. She does this each dawn and each dusk, her arms moving in the same motion as her mother's and her mother's before. The smell of ground maize mixes with smoke from cooking fires. It clings to your hair, to your skin, until you cannot tell where you end and the city begins. Nearby, children throw reed balls at each other, laughing, falling into the dust, and standing again to play the same game. Their shouts bounce off the walls and echo into the canals. Ducks flap their wings at the noise, sending ripples across the water. The sound is ordinary, but tonight it feels like the center of the world. A guard leans against a wall, tapping his obsidian spear lightly against stone. The rhythm is offbeat, not part of the drums, but a kind of casual percussion of boredom. He yawns, scratches his chin, mutters something to himself. You smile. Even in the shadow of gods, boredom survives. At the market, traders pack away their wares. Cloth folded, gourds stacked, cacao beans counted carefully like coins. One man eats a late snack, a roasted ear of maize sprinkled with chile and lime. He bites, wipes his mouth with his sleeve, and sighs in satisfaction. The flavor is simple, the gesture timeless. You taste it too. The sweetness of corn brightened by lime, heat lingering on your lips. It is a reminder that life is not all ceremony. Hunger and pleasure still find ways to meet. Historians often glance past these details, chasing numbers of sacrifices or tallies of war. Yet here is another truth. Most of life in Tenochtitlan was ordinary. Grinding maize, selling goods, mending nets, gossiping over tamales. The extraordinary stood on a stage built from the ordinary. Without these rhythms, the grand rituals would have floated without ground. A small joke nudges its way in. Imagine someone centuries later asking, "What was it like living in the great city?" And the answer being, mostly grinding maize, mostly eating tamales, sometimes avoiding ducks. You chuckle softly. Even empires are built on errands. Time here stretches. The repetition makes it feel endless. The scrape of stone on maize, the splash of oars in the canal, the patter of children's feet, all loop until you lose track of where one day ends and another begins. That is the trick of long rituals. They do not only demand attention in their climaxes, they demand patience in their repetition. You lie back with the city. Your ears fill with these small sounds, steady as breath. Your body begins to match them. You realize that this is how people endured, not through spectacle, but through rhythm. Life repeated until it became bearable. The quiet moment fades,
and your attention shifts to the machinery beneath the city's rituals. For the Aztec world, ceremony was never a matter of whim. It was regulated, counted, enforced. Rules were written not on parchment alone, but into the calendar, into the mouths of priests, into the bones of those who dared to break them. You begin to see the gears turning. Marriage, for example, was less about romance and more about order. Families arranged unions with a careful eye to lineage and alliance. There were laws governing who could marry whom, which ages were proper, what ceremonies were required. A boy who married too young risked punishment. A girl who broke a vow of chastity might be strangled, her body a warning to others. You shiver slightly at the thought, not from gore, but from the cold efficiency of it. The priests enforced abstinence in seasons when the gods required it. There were nights when couples were forbidden to touch, mornings when husbands and wives slept separately on woven mats. At other times, fertility was commanded and unions were expected. Desire was not private, it was drafted into the empire's service. Your own thoughts stumble over that. To be told when to love and when not to love feels like surrendering the last pocket of freedom. Food was regulated too. Commoners ate maize, beans, squash. Meat was rare, a luxury saved for nobles or for ritual. Yet even here rules pressed down. During fasts, maize gruel was thinned to near nothing, leaving the belly hollow by design. Priests insisted hunger purified. A man who ate more than permitted could face punishment, sometimes public, sometimes brutal. It was not simply about food, it was about obedience. One chronicler describes a law that banned drunkenness for anyone under 30. Pulque, the fermented agave drink, was sacred, reserved for elders and for ritual. A young man caught drunk could be executed. A young woman caught drunk could have her hair shorn and her home destroyed. Historians debate how strictly these punishments were enforced. Some argue they were rare warnings, others claim they were grimly real. The truth may lie in between. What matters is the shadow such laws cast. The absurdity of it slips in, as it often does. Imagine the city guard of Tenochtitlan patrolling with obsidian spears, not to fight rebels, but to check who might be tipsy on pulque. You almost laugh. The idea of a hangover being a capital crime is both terrifying and ridiculous. Through all these laws, you glimpse the logic. By regulating desire, by rationing food, by scripting behavior, the empire made sure every life pointed toward the gods. There was no room for accident. Each hunger, each touch, each sip of drink carried meaning. It sounds suffocating to you now, but to them it must have felt like safety. In a world where the sun's rising was never guaranteed, rules offered reassurance that someone was keeping the universe on schedule. You taste again a small symbol of that order. A thin tortilla, folded around beans, plain and flavorless. It is not meant to delight. It is meant to discipline. Bite, swallow, obey. The city thrives because its people do. So you lie with that thought. The Aztec system was not chaos, not reckless cruelty. It was an elaborate mechanism, wound tight, each cog expected to turn exactly when called. If a person faltered, the machine still moved, and the faltering life was simply replaced. Efficiency dressed in feathers and incense. And in the back of your mind, a whisper of unease. If rules can govern desire itself, what part of you is truly your own?
The city does not pause. The drums keep time, the priests chant, and the chosen continue their march. But now the strain on their bodies grows sharp, no longer background discomfort, but the center of every hour. The young warrior wakes to emptiness in his belly, so loud it drowns the morning birds. His ribs show faintly through skin stretched thin.
The tamale given to him today is little more than a crumb, dry and tasteless. When he swallows, it sticks in his throat. He tries to wash it down with water, but even water is rationed. His tongue feels rough as bark. He wipes his mouth and says nothing. To speak hunger aloud is to admit weakness. The captive woman feels it too. She has lost weight in days, her cheekbones sharper, her steps slower. Today they hand her a thin drink of atole, maize gruel so watery it is almost clear. It warms her stomach for a moment before fading, leaving her hollow again. She holds the cup in her hands, staring at the rippling surface, as if it might reveal how many more mornings she must endure. You feel her exhaustion pressing against your own chest. The sun beats down harder. The plaza stones radiate heat that stings bare feet. The warrior stumbles once, catching himself quickly. The woman climbs the temple steps, her breath shallow, her painted skin streaked with sweat. Every movement is work. Every movement is pain. You cannot help but think of how fragile flesh is, how easy it is to push past its limits when the mind is forced to obey a drumbeat. A priest offers a peculiar ration in the afternoon, a strip of cactus pad grilled with chili. It is bitter, slimy, almost unpleasant. The warrior chews slowly, grimacing at the taste. The woman swallows hers without expression. Even strange food becomes precious when it is all that stands between body and collapse. Historians debate how severe these shortages were. Some chronicles describe lavish meals for ritual participants, fattened like prized animals before the final act. Others describe deliberate deprivation, hunger as a holy tool. Excavations suggest both might be true, depending on the god, the season, the ceremony. You are left with the unsettling possibility that suffering was itself a kind of offering. The day grows long. The warrior's blistered feet bleed through his sandals. The woman's knees shake with each climb. Neither falters publicly, but both know their bodies are slipping beyond repair. They share nothing aloud, yet you imagine a glance between them in passing, a silent recognition that endurance is not glory, but survival. And still the city hums around them. Canoes ferry maize across canals. Children laugh and play. Merchants count cacao beans with practiced fingers. The contrast stings. Their suffering is spectacle, but for everyone else, life is errands and trade. Empires always balance this way. The ordinary rests on the extraordinary, and the extraordinary rests on the breaking of a few. A moment of irony catches your mind. If Amazon deliveries had existed in Tenochtitlan, perhaps the warrior's sandals would have arrived on time. Perhaps the atole would not taste like watered dust. You smirk despite yourself. Even in misery, the absurd survives. By dusk, both are trembling. The drums echo slow and steady, while their hearts race and stutter. The torches flare, the chants rise. Their bodies are at the edge of collapse, yet they bow their heads and continue. Hunger, thirst, exhaustion, these have become part of the ceremony, woven into the steps as tightly as feathers into a headdress. Tonight they will sleep on mats that feel like stone. Their stomachs will growl, their limbs will ache. And in the morning, the drums will demand more.
The body can be pushed until it hollows out, but the mind is trickier. It bends, then resists, then begins to splinter. This is where the true weight of the ritual shows itself. The young warrior sits in silence, his back against the temple wall. His feet are torn, his belly empty, his head light. But it is not pain that troubles him most. It is the creeping thought that perhaps he is nothing more than a tool, that his bravery is only another kind of obedience. He watches the priests walk by, their blackened robes trailing incense,
and he feels a sharp flicker of resentment. It vanishes quickly, swallowed by fear. To doubt is to risk punishment worse than death. Yet the thought has been planted, and once planted, it grows. The captive woman feels her spirit fray too. She has endured hunger, heat, and endless ceremonies. But now comes a quieter cruelty. A priest instructs her to sing a hymn to the goddess Tlozol, goddess of desire and sin. Her voice is hoarse, cracked from thirst, yet she obeys. As she sings, the priest interrupts, correcting her tone, her posture, her breath. Each correction chips away at her until she feels less like a person than a hollow reed through which others blow their songs. She remembers her village, remembers laughing with her sisters, remembers a night when they whispered about men and futures and choice. The memory slices her open. Here, choice has evaporated. She belongs to the ritual, to the god, to the crowd. She closes her eyes and keeps singing, because to stop would be to admit despair. A brief absurdity intrudes. One of the guards, bored, yawns so loudly that the chant falters for a moment. The warrior notices, and a tiny laugh escapes his throat. He covers it quickly, but it lingers in the air like a secret rebellion. The woman sees it too, and hides her own smile. Even in cages, humor survives. Historians argue about these moments. Some claim participants embrace their roles, proud to serve the gods. Others insist fear dominated, that obedience was carved from terror. The truth is likely tangled. People can believe and doubt at the same time, can serve faithfully while quietly resenting the chains. Scholars debate, but you watch the living paradox in front of you. A warrior who questions, a woman who sings against her own silence. The rituals press harder. One night, they are told to reenact sacred unions, gestures so intimate that they blur the line between symbol and reality. Both the warrior and the woman understand this is theater for the gods and for the crowd, not for themselves. Yet their bodies are dragged into the script. Choice evaporates again. They obey, not because they believe, but because the drumbeat leaves no space for refusal. You feel their shame and their endurance intertwine. The woman whispers to herself in the dark afterward, "If I hide a piece of myself, they cannot take everything." The warrior thinks the same, though he does not say it. You realize they are bound by an invisible pact, a silent agreement to guard the last corner of their souls. The drums return at dawn. The plaza fills once more. Their faces are painted, their hunger sharpened, their doubts hidden beneath feathers and ash. They step forward into the ceremony not because they want to, not because they choose to, but because the empire demands it. And somewhere in the background, a child giggles at a stray dog chasing its tail, oblivious to the weight pressing down on the chosen. The absurd and the tragic walk side by side. That is how empires function. That is how people survive.
The mourning is heavier than the others. From the first strike of the drum, you sense that this day will not end like the rest. The air itself feels crowded, thick with incense and expectation. Torches burn even though the sun is already climbing. The plaza is filled to its edges, people pressed shoulder to shoulder, their faces turned toward the pyramid steps. The noise is not loud, not yet. It is a hush that vibrates, the kind of silence that exists only before thunder. The young warrior feels his legs trembling. Hunger has carved hollows in his body, and fever has left his eyes glazed, but still he climbs. Each stone stair presses against the blisters of his feet, each step a private scream. Yet he ascends, because to falter would be to collapse under the gaze of thousands. His breath rasps like a broken flute, but he steadies it, forcing each inhale to match the drumbeat. Beside him, the captive woman climbs as well. Her body is painted again, her hair braided and woven with feathers that itch against her skin. She feels the eyes of the city on her, heavy as chains. Her stomach is empty, her throat dry, but her back remains straight. Each step is measured, deliberate, as if she wills herself to become the goddess she has been told she embodies. Inside, she is shattering, but outside, she is an icon. The crowd erupts as the procession nears the summit. Drums boom in doubled rhythm, rattles shake, conch shells wail. The sound is almost unbearable, a storm of noise that swallows thought. The warrior's ears ring. The woman's heart pounds so hard she wonders if the crowd can see it beneath her chest. You feel it too, your own pulse sinking to the rhythm, unwillingly swept into the current. At the top of the pyramid, the priests wait in blackened robes. Their hands are painted red, their faces shadowed by smoke. Obsidian blades glint in the torchlight. The air smells of copal resin, thick and sweet, masking the sharper scents that are about to come. The warrior kneels. The woman stands beside him, trembling but still. The chanting rises to a frenzy. Thousands of voices shout the names of gods. The sky above is bright, merciless. Sweat drips into the warrior's eyes, stinging. He blinks it away. The woman lifts her chin, her lips pressed tight. Neither speaks. Words are useless here. A single sound cuts through the chaos, the scrape of sandals on stone, the final step taken. Then the priest raises his arms and the plaza falls silent for a heartbeat. The silence is worse than the noise. In that pause, you can hear everything. The warrior's ragged breath, the woman's clenched teeth, the faint buzz of flies circling the torches. The climax comes swift. Drums strike hard, chants erupt again, and the ritual unfolds. To the crowd, it is triumph. To the participants, it is surrender. To you, it is both. A collision of awe and dread that leaves no room for comfort. A detail fixes itself in your mind. As the warrior kneels, a single feather from his headdress drifts loose, spinning slowly in the air until it lands on the hot stone. It is such a small thing, almost laughably fragile, yet it carries the weight of the moment more than the chants or the drums. You will remember the feather long after the noise fades. Historians debate the numbers, the scale, the meaning. Did thousands die in ceremonies like this, or only hundreds? Were the unions real or symbolic? Did the Aztec people see glory here, or only terror? Scholars argue, but none of them stood on the steps with blistered feet and painted skin. None of them felt the sun burn into the back of their neck while the crowd demanded perfection. You stand there now, with them, watching the climax of a ritual that is both horrifying and meticulously planned. The drums thunder. The chants rise. The empire feeds its gods, and the gods, silent as ever, accept. The plaza exhales. The roar of drums fades into a hollow throb. The chanting dissolves into murmurs, and the smell of copal lingers like smoke caught in cloth. Thousands of people begin to drift away, their sandals slapping stone, their voices subdued now that the climax has passed. The spectacle is over. What remains is silence, heavy and strange, the kind that arrives after too much noise. The young warrior lies where he was placed, his body slack, his painted feathers scattered across the steps. The sun burns down, but he no longer feels its heat. His obsidian amulet has slipped from his chest, resting against the stone. A priest nudges it aside with his foot, uninterested in the small detail of a life. You notice it, though. The amulet is chipped, imperfect, but it once meant everything. That chip is the part that will haunt you. The captive woman stands trembling in the aftermath, her body still painted, her headdress tilted, her lips cracked.
The crowd stares at her with a mixture of awe and pity. To them, she is no longer herself, but the shell of a goddess who has just been honored and emptied. She feels hollow, more ghost than flesh. She lowers her eyes and breathes through the bitterness in her throat. Around them, the city returns to routine. Merchants reopen their stalls. Children chase each other through alleys. Farmers pole canoes across the lake. The market smells again of maize and chili, of roasted fish and sweet amaranth cakes. Life continues because it must. Empires cannot pause for grief. One absurd detail catches your attention. A dog trots into the plaza and begins sniffing at the feathers scattered on the ground. It chases one across the stones, pouncing, wagging its tail. A few children laugh before their mothers hush them. For a moment, the scene is almost comic. Even here, even now, a dog plays. You feel relief in that, as if the world insists on reminding you it is still more than ritual. Historians tally what came after. Spanish accounts exaggerate the numbers, speaking of tens of thousands offered on temple steps. Archaeology suggests less, though still enough to chill the blood. Scholars argue whether the empire used these rituals as terror, as devotion, or both. The records are fragments, the truth uncertain. What is certain is the echo. The rituals shaped memory, carved fear and awe into every heart present. A woman in the crowd carries home her tamale, uneaten during the ceremony. She bites into it now, the masa cooled and dry, the beans salty on her tongue. The taste is ordinary, but the memory of the drums lingers with it. She will not forget. None of them will. The plaza empties fully. Torches gutter out. Feathers lie abandoned. The stones still warm from the sun and from bodies. The silence grows heavier, as if the city itself is tired. You stand in that silence with them. You feel the emptiness, not only of stomachs, but of meaning. What was promised has been given, yet the sky remains the same. The lake laps gently at the causeways, and the stars will rise again tonight, whether or not the gods are satisfied. You realize that the echo is not only in the city, but in you. The feather, the amulet, the painted woman's silence, these are the fragments that stay. Not the chants, not the numbers, but the small human traces left behind when the drums stop.
Night settles again over the lake. The torches are out, the market has gone quiet, and the stone steps stand empty, washed in moonlight. The plaza that hours ago shook with drums now lies still. A faint breeze carries the smell of maize griddles cooling, of flowers left wilting on the temple platform. You stand in that hush, listening to the soft lap of water against canal walls. A single feather remains on the steps, caught in a crack between stones. It stirs with the wind, but does not lift away. Nearby, the chipped obsidian amulet rests where it was dropped, glinting faintly under the stars. No priest has claimed it, no passerby has noticed. Small things, left behind, become the truest record of the night. The woman sits alone on a reed mat. Her paint has smudged into streaks, her hair tangled, her hands resting in her lap. She looks not at the temple, but at the water beyond the causeway, its surface shining like black glass. Her breathing is slow, steady, fragile. She has endured, though she cannot yet name what endurance means. The city exhales.
Crickets sing from the chinampas, frogs echo from the canals. Ordinary sounds reclaim the night, steady as a lullaby. The empire believes the gods have been fed, that the sun will rise again, that order has been maintained. And perhaps it is true. Yet in the quiet you sense something deeper, the persistence of small lives, the laughter of children, the taste of tamales, the wag of a dog's tail. These linger longer than chance. You close your eyes with the city. The drums are gone, the torches cold, the plaza empty. What remains is the image of a single feather, a chipped amulet, a woman breathing in the dark. If you have followed me through these hours, let your shoulders fall now. Let your jaw loosen. Let sleep take you the way the lake takes moonlight, slowly and without effort. Thank you for listening, for keeping me company on this long walk through Tenochtitlan. If you found rest here, you can leave a light for me, a small mark of your presence, and if you want to be here again when the next story drifts across the water, you can let yourself be found. Until then, let the city fade, let the night carry you. Good night.
This audio is made with Audio Toolkit for Windows Store, downloaded for free now.